we discussed about two main approaches to human relationships, to our perspective of world, to what is important, or to our intellectual way of life, to our emotional way of life. We said that those two are authoritarian and indulgent in nature. And we described to some degree, not completely, the characteristics of these two ways of behavior and their impact on the way that we raise our children. Now, we know that these two approaches that are prevalent all over the world, neither of them are satisfactory, neither of them are good enough, neither of them solve the fundamental needs of humanity. And consequently, these two approaches need to be replaced by a new approach. This new approach has to be fundamentally different from the other two approaches. It cannot be a compromise to say a little bit of that and a little bit of the other one, and then say this is what we have. Compromise wouldn't work here. The reason that these two approaches are not useful and they are not successful and they are destructive is because they miss the spiritual dimension. They are not based on spiritual principles. Some of them are based on ideological principles, especially the authoritarian system. The ideological principles such as, it is good to be orderly. You know, this is one of the arguments that you get. It is important to people to obey the law. That's true. It is good to be orderly. It is important to obey the law. In respect to rigidity of mind, say, we have to maintain our heritage. That's true. We have to maintain our heritage. Another argument that they bring in favor of this kind of situation, they say, you cannot be weak in life. You have to have a strength and power. That's true. You do. And also they argue that it is important that we establish hierarchy in the society and some people obey orders and so forth. All of these, you can argue in their favor. And everybody argues in their favor. As a matter of fact, when you go and discuss the issues, you'll see that people have enormous arguments supporting this mode of action. What they do, they focus on some aspects of the model, authoritarian, which are positive, and they completely reject and deny the negative aspects. They say that doesn't exist. You see, that's the fundamental problem that happens. Now, those who follow the path of focusing on the indulgent model also have very good arguments. The indulgent model basically came about when the society started to be psychologized. This one was when society was moralized, and here is when society was psychologized. And consequently, they brought psychological arguments. It is good to have fun. Of course, it's good to have fun. Which one is better, to have violence or fun? Of course it's better fun. Which one is better, to make love or to war? Of course it's better to make love, okay? So argument is very, very easy. Individuals, they say, well, everybody is unique. That's true. And so everybody has a right. That's true. Everybody should be free to do something. That's true. So consequently, these individuals look at life in the context of arguing that it is important to look at the psychological needs of people and support them and so forth. Now, the third one is respect to intellectual and emotional expressions. They argue that people should be free to say what they want to say. You know, the United States is established on the principles of freedom of expression. People should be free to say what they want to say. So therefore, for example, recently there was a Supreme Court in the United States, I think it was Supreme Court, ruled that freedom of expression is more important than materials put on the internet about child pornography. And therefore they said child pornography should be allowed, because if you don't allow it, it interferes with personal freedom of expression. For example, on the internet, you can go and learn how to make bombs. They believe now that the person who made the bomb in Atlanta Olympics learned it from the internet. The courts, they say, we would not stop that because it fringes on personal freedom to express themselves. You see how it is? So the society then becomes totally promiscuous because they think that freedom without any limitation is the most important thing to do. You see? And they argue that this is essential and this and that. You see? In respect to emotional thing, I give you some examples of it. At the turn of the century, basically, when modern psychology started, the psychologists start telling people, if you're angry, express it. But the reason is that they said when you keep anger inside yourself, then it causes you to have ulcer, it causes you to have hysterical conditions, it causes you to have different psychological problems. Therefore, you should express your anger so that your anger also doesn't cause violence. A century later, the world is expressing anger a lot and is more violent as well. And none of those problems have gone away. Something has gone wrong in this philosophy and this discussion and so forth. You see? This is what has happened. And therefore, and also in respect to anarchy, relationships, there are, actually there is a group in the world, in every country, they're called anarchists, whose pride is to create disorder in the society, whose objective is to create disorder, because they have very profound, in quotation mark, philosophical arguments that this is necessary. You see, this is, therefore, both the authoritarian and the indulgent models, both of them are defended in the world today. And when you go and start listening to them, you see the arguments are usually very heated arguments. You even see the examples of that sometimes within the Baha'i community. When, for example, they are talking about how to, for example, deal with the children in the feast. And you suddenly see there are three groups. One group says, don't bring children at all. Actually, fourth group. Fourth group says, don't have any children. Okay, okay. But okay. And then there is another group that says children should come, should sit there, should be quiet, should be totally orderly. If they are crying and so forth, they should be taken out, they should be punished. And another group says children should be free, they should be allowed to go around and wander, and you suddenly come to a feast and you sit there and you see all of this happening. Some parents don't bring their children and then they get angry that others have brought their children. Some parents don't have children and say, thank God I don't have any children. Some parents are sitting there with their little children, sitting there very quiet, and they're saying, I am the greatest parents because my children are, and they get angry at those children who are going around, and the other parents sitting there with a big smile on their faces while their children making havoc of everything, and say, isn't that nice? My child is free and creative. So this is the kind of attitudes that exist, and these are all over, okay? And we have to be self-evaluative. We have to begin to reflect on ourselves to see what is it that we do and so forth. These are the elements that are fundamental in respect to raising our children. So while moralizing principles of authoritarianism and psychologizing principles of indulgence, both of them have proved to be inadequate. Now we have to see what is the spiritual model. What would happen if we began to have a spiritual perspective on what is important in life, on what should be our world view, on what should be our attitude toward intellectual and emotional expressions and the way that we express them, and on how should be our relationships in the hierarchy, in the order of hierarchy, in respect to hierarchy. So let's reflect on those. So let's call these, I've called it in my book another name, but here I call it spiritual mode. And the indulgent, well, we call it the name that I have given it, which is integrative mode. Integrative. The word integrative means something that can bring things together and create a new entity. Okay? That's what it means. Entity that grows and develops and evolves and so on. And this one, the indulgent mode is a primarily psychological, has a psychological perspective, and the authoritarian mode has primarily a moralistic perspective. Moralistic perspective. These are the perspectives that are very important for us to keep in mind. And here we are talking about spiritual mode, okay? Now, when we reflect on what is the most important issue in life, what should be our orientation in life, from a spiritual perspective, we realize that it could not be to obtain power. We know that. Nor it could be to indulge ourselves with pleasures, because both of them we know that they have negative consequences. But at the same time, we have to have certain strength. So we need certain kind of power. And at the same time, life should be enjoyable. Life shouldn't be miserable. So there is certain kind of pleasure that is important. You cannot live a life in which you don't have any strength and you don't have any enjoyment. That life is miserable, you see. You see, is like being sick. When you're sick, you don't have enough strength and you don't enjoy anything. But that's That's not a good idea to be. As we reflect, we will see that there is a certain condition that combines the most positive aspects of power and pleasure and adds a new dimension to them. In other words, takes the best out of the moral perspectives and of the psychological perspectives and adds a new dimension to that. And that new dimension makes the whole objective of life different. And the objective here, the best way that we can put it, is the objective of growth. Growth. Which the ultimate aim of growth is transformation. Transformation is the ultimate aim of growth. Transformation. Now, growth is very interesting quality. It's the interesting phenomenon. When you help a child to grow, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in every respect, growth, comprehensive growth. When you do that, the child automatically becomes more powerful. But this is a creative power. That's a positive power. It's not a power to control. It's not a power to have force over other people. It is a power of development, of enrichment, of having fruits, of evolution. When the tree grows, the ultimate outcome is that the tree can withstand the storms, so things don't destroy it and uproot it, and also it eventually brings fruits. You see? So it transforms itself from being a little bush to being a source of life, which is a very different condition. And the whole thing takes place through focusing on growth. Now, individual life also the focus should be not to have more power, therefore more money or more positions or more or any of those things, but to have true growth. It really doesn't matter whether somebody shows you on television or not, or whether you become famous or not, or whether, how many of you want to be famous like the person who put the bomb in Atlanta? How many of you want to be? He's famous. You see? How many of you want to have money and be in jail, like some of the Korean leaders are in jail, for example? How many of you want to? You have a lot of money. How many of you want to be powerful and history write your name and say he was like Hitler or she was like Hitler? How many of you want to have that? So power, money, fame, these things are very different than the capacity of you evolving in such a way that people say, look at this individual. This individual looks like a mature human being, a complete human being, a total human being. See? And because the person has maturity, then has enormous amount of power. Because the person has spiritual capacities, has enormous amount of power. Did Gandhi have power? He did. Was he powerful in a person? No. Was he was rich? No. He didn't have any of those things, but he had a spiritual strength. His personalities evolve and develop to that process. Who is more powerful? The individuals who martyr the Iranian Baha'is or the Iranian Baha'is who are martyred? What do you think would be in the course of history the outcome of that process and looking at it? Who was more powerful, Socrates or people who gave him the prison, in the prison the poison to die? Okay? How many of you know the name of those people who gave poison to Socrates to die? How many people have been affected by their impact and being positive? But Socrates has affected millions of people. You see, power has a different dynamic in it. It is power, it's spiritual power. This is a spiritual power. This is the power that gives you true growth and true development. And eventually, you transform. And then as you grow as a person, then you develop enormous degree of joy and pleasure. Growth is painful on the one way, on one hand, and is enjoyable, extremely enjoyable, on the other hand. How many of you wouldn't enjoy to graduate from university? You will, okay? It's difficult to go through university. It's very difficult. You have to study, you have to control yourself, you have to do all of those things. But when you graduate, you have the profound joy. And it's a joy that doesn't last for one day. It's a joy that stays for the rest of life for you. It gives you higher status, it gives you more money, it gives you all of those things that others are searching for. But you do it in a context that is different. So the whole objective is to begin to create families in which the environment is growth-oriented rather than power-oriented, who is right and who is wrong, who is more strong and who is less strong, or a pleasure-oriented, or who is getting what he wants or she wants. Most families are either power-oriented or pleasure-oriented or both. Husbands and wives relate to each other that way. Parents and children relate to each other that way. And children relate to each other that way. But the whole idea is for us to begin consciously create environments that are not power-oriented, are not pleasure-oriented, but they are growth-oriented. That whatever we do, plans that we make, processes that we create in the family, the objective is to help the growth of everybody involved, meaning the children and the parents, not only the children, everybody involved. Because the beauty of growth is that everybody can grow at the same time and still not be competing with each other. You see, because this is a different kind of enjoyment and so forth. Okay? Now, let's move to the next. The spiritual perspective towards worldview cannot be dichotomous, creating divisions. It cannot. Nor it can be individualistic and selfish and self-centered. However, it has to do something very interesting. It has to reconcile the best of these two things. Bring some of the good things about each of these perspectives together and add new dimension to them and create a new conceptual framework. A new approach about the way you look at the world. For example, in the family, or family in relationship to the society, we have to help the children to realize two things. Realize that each of them as individuals, they are unique, therefore different from others. But at the same time, they are at one. They are one with others. They're the same at the principle level of their humanity with others. They are one and unique at the same time, okay? Which means unity in diversity. So the worldview based on the spiritual principles, it would be worldview of unity in diversity. It wouldn't be the worldview of worldview that focuses primarily on diversity, okay, which is dichotomy, or primarily on unity, saying everybody is the same, and therefore I'm going to focus on myself, you are going to focus on yourself, and you are going to focus on yourself. No. Everybody is unique, but everybody is a part of one body of humanity. This is the unity in diversity concept. Now, in the family, we have to be able to create conditions of unity in diversity. Usually families don't have that. Some families, for example, in Chinese societies, in Persian societies, in possibly Japanese society, I don't know about that, they say the most important thing is the family. You have to protect the family. There are others who focus on the rights of every person. Rights of children. Like in the United States, you have rights of children, rights of wife, rights of husband. So the emphasis is on individuals. So in the spiritual context, you create a family in which the rights of the individuals and the rights of the whole, the family, both are protected. In other words, the uniqueness of each individual is celebrated, becomes exciting, and at the same time, unity is created. Now, this is very important about uniqueness, because when you have more than one child, you're going to have the issue of sibling rivalry. You're having the issue of competition between children. Sibling rivalry means children competing with each other. One child competing with the other child. Who is loving me more? Does daddy love me more or loves my sister more? That mommy loves me more or my brother more? And the sibling rivalry, who gets more? He got this kind of a blue gene and I got that kind of a blue gene. And that becomes a source of competition and argument and fight between children. So sibling rivalry happens when the family doesn't pay attention to uniqueness of every child, and at the same time making sure that when you treat children, there is a fundamental justice with what you do, that you are fair, that what you do with every child is fair. See, and this combination is extremely important. How you do that becomes the issue that we have to learn, you see. So unity in diversity then would take place of the dichotomous perspective of the authoritarian, the moralistic view that they have there, and the individualism of the indulgent, and would create a condition in which every person is precious, but the unity of the whole is safeguarded. Now, unity in diversity is something that we talk a lot about it, but is extremely difficult concept. And it is unfortunate that because it's so simple when we say it, that we think we have understood it. And therefore there is not deep thinking going on amongst Baha'is of principles and dynamics of unity in diversity. What does it mean to create a family characterized by unity in diversity? How this issue is related to issue of equality of women and men. How this issue is related to issue of justice in a family. These are the issues that we have to begin to think about it a lot. How is it related to issue of freedom of each individual? These are the things that require far more thinking and consultation and discussion on our part. We are dealing with these profound concepts in very superficial ways. We have to begin to become much more profound, much more deep, much more questioning about these issues. It's not as simple as we have made it to be. How many families you know that actually have sat there consciously saying, we have to create unity in diversity in our family? They may talk about unity and diversity in the society, and they usually mean that, we like people of another race or something like that, and that's it. But that's not unity and diversity, that's just the beginning process. It's a far more profound dynamics of a spiritualization are needed, a spiritualization of family, in order to have a family that is characterized by growth, transformation, and unity in diversity. Okay? So families have to begin to experiment these issues. Then let's move to the next stage. So we said that in the authoritarian mode, the approach to intellectual and emotional issues is that of rigidity. Rigidity of mind, closed-mindedness, and fear of emotions, with the exception of anger. That's to put it briefly, that's the characteristic of the authoritarian. And the characteristic of the indulgent, we said, is that there is no laws, there is no regulations, there is nothing to obey. There is a total promiscuity, total absolute freedom of expression that goes to beyond the boundaries of righteousness. And therefore, it's not surprising that, for example, in the book of Law of Baha'u'llah, the most holy book we read, that he says absolute freedom is characteristic of animals. You see, animals, if they're hungry, they go and eat something. It doesn't matter whether it belongs to them or to the, to their owner or to the neighbor's owner. Who cares? You're hungry, you eat. If they want sex, they go and have sex. It doesn't matter. Is it my father? Is it my mother? Is it my sister? Is who? It's just do it, okay? Because it's the instinct that comes. You just go and do it, okay? You want to sleep, you sleep. You want to up. This is the animal freedom, and humanity has been searching for that animal freedom. And the outcome of that is the promiscuous kind of society that we create. That's the outcome, okay? But now we want to create a spiritual civilization. Spiritual civilization will be characterized by open hearts, by open minds, by open homes, by profound respect for rules and laws and regulations, of spiritual laws and the scientific material laws. And within that process, you begin to have a special quality. What do you think that quality would be?
Discipline.
Discipline? Well, yes, discipline plus freedom. When you combine discipline and freedom together, you have a condition of creativity. Creativity. In other words, you can create something. Creativity is a condition in which you combine order with freedom, discipline with liberty. Is a very unique mixture. You bring two opposing conditions and create a new something which is totally new. Creativity not only in artistic sense, but in every sense of word. Every human being has to be a creative being. Okay? We are creative beings. We create. We constantly create. And everything that is around us, we have created. This table, this glass, this lamp, this television, this everything. We create. Okay? But a good creator is the person who is able to combine enormous degree of order with enormous degree of freedom. In the home, we have to do the same thing. The family has to have, on the one hand, order, and within that order, there has to be freedom of experimentation. Children have to know that there are certain fundamental principles that they have to follow, and within those fundamental principles, they have total freedom of expression. And it becomes very interesting when you do that. I'll give you an example. Let's say a family says that one of the principles that we have is that we should pray every day. Then how each child prays is up to them. One may decide to chant it. One may decide to go in a room, close the door, and do it alone. One may decide to do it otherwise. Or you may decide in a family, say, in our family, one of the principles is that each and every one of us have to excel in the qualities that we have. Excel in something. To become excellent in something. So one child says, I want to be a scientist. One child says, I want to be an artist. One child says, I want to study languages. These are very different. Another person says, I want to be a good carpenter. When the parents said, you have freedom to excel in whatever area you feel the most comfortable, then the parents should be willing to help this child to become the unique person that he or she wants to become. But if the person says, well, I'm a lawyer, you have to be a lawyer. Or I'm a doctor, you have to be a doctor. Or engineers make a lot of money, so become an engineer. Or politicians have a lot of power, so go and study politics and become a politician. When you do that, then sometimes it is in harmony with the nature of the child. Many times it is not in harmony with the nature of the child. So consequently, the child is put in a state of conflict. Either has to go along with what the parent wants and against what he wants, or go in favor of what he wants and against what the parents want.
If you are making for him
That's right. If you make a decision for the child. If you demand the child to do that. You see? But if you make the standards in the family that everybody has to excel and to become excellent in something that is useful for life, and that would allow you to become a person of your own right and serve humanity, then whatever the person chooses in the areas of art, sciences, and occupations, that's fine. And these are the kind of things that requires a lot of maturity on the part of the parents to, on the one hand, to encourage excellence, and on the other hand, that the parent doesn't get upset that the child is not going to do what they want them to do. See, we all have hopes for our children, that our children would go this direction and that direction and that direction, and the child would choose a third direction to go, or fourth direction. And it takes a lot of maturity on the part of parents to say, okay, you have chosen this, Let's consult about it. Let's talk about it. Let's see whether it is really a good choice. After the child finally has decided, you say, now that you have decided, I will support you completely, totally, wholeheartedly. So the child knows now that you are with him. And that would create a totally different dynamics in the attitude of that child toward his or her studies and work and so forth. But if the child knows that the parent doesn't approve, then the child would go on conflicted, full of conflict about that choice. Yes, you want to say?
If creativity is one of the outcomes for this model, how you put into context the fact that many creative people in history were also very disturbed people.
That's right.
Psychologically and,
Yeah.
and socially.
Well, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to create an environment and society. We have creative people who are not disturbed. You see, it is not an unavoidable fact, or it is not written, that everybody who is creative also should be emotionally or otherwise disturbed. Okay? The reason that creative peoples in the past have suffered so much and still are suffering so much is because the society doesn't understand the value of the creativity and usually goes against it. So the child has to go, the person has to go against the process of the society, and therefore enormous the degree of rejection or humiliation or deprivation of all of those things take place, and they become consequently disturbed, emotionally or otherwise. Okay? The whole idea is to create a new civilization in which those who want to pursue arts, those who want to pursue sciences, who wants to pursue professions, those who want to pursue different occupations, they would feel that everything that they do is extremely valuable for the society. So they would be in harmony with the standards of the society and the family rather than in fight with it. You see, there's another reason that, for example, because the society, most societies are not very friendly to creative people, artistic people especially. Creative is broad. Creative involves sciences, arts. Creative involves everything. But artistic people. No, artistic people. The reason that the society is not friendly to artistic people is because artists, good artists, profound artists, true artists, they always are one step ahead of the rest of the people in understanding the changes in the society and what is happening. So artists always bring new ideas to the consciousness. And the society, especially society that's authoritarian, becomes very uncomfortable with that kind of artist. That's the reason that the authoritarian systems, regimes, when they take power, the first group of people that they kill are the artists and the scientists and the intellectuals. Not because they have bombs, not because they have armies, not because they have money, but because they have ideas. And ideas are frightening. New ideas are powerful. Why they put the founders of religions into jail and do what they do them and kill them? Why they killed Christ? Why they killed the Bab? Why they imprisoned Baha'u'llah? Because they were afraid of these profound new ideas that was being brought. Ideas are aspects of creativity, creating new ideas, coming up with new ideas. So that's what happens. Yes.
There are different influences on the child besides the family.
Yes.
That can hamper their
That's right.
creativity.
That's right.
And the circle of other family members, the extended family, friends, who can begin to put doubt into the child about their own creativity and
Yes.
their own, even the professions that they may choose, even though they have support in the home from the parents, the world out there tells them, well, that's not such a good idea.
Yes. The question is what you do with the influence from outside of the family, which many times goes contrary to your own directives to the child. Well, that's of course a fundamental challenge of our time. We know the problems. You see, what we are doing in the Baha'i community, we are trying to make community an extended family. In other words, we are trying to create a condition in which the child feels and receives the same messages in the family and in the community. Okay, that's the whole idea. So it is so important that the community and the individuals and the families be consult with each other about these issues. How many times communities at the 19-day feast consult about how we should coordinate our way of thinking as adults, so that messages that we give our children are coordinated and harmonious. We don't. But these are the kind of things that we have to do, because within the Baha'i community especially, the Baha'i community life, community is an extended family. Okay? But having said that, still there are other influences. The influence from television, the influence from media, the influence from other children in school, the influence is everywhere. You have to know that ultimately, the most influential person in the life of a child is a loving, encouraging parent. When children have parents who are truly loving to them and encouraging of them and respect them and like their positive qualities and trying to help them to excel, children may, for a while, become fascinated with the other ideas and concepts, but then eventually come back around. One of the characteristics of adolescence is that adolescence becomes an extremely painful test for parents. Adolescent age is not only difficult for the children, for the adolescents, but it's also difficult for the parents, because adolescents challenge the validity of the parents' perspectives, and they disobey the parents, and they create difficulty in the relationship. And then the parents either get angry or they give up or something of that nature, you see. And they think that they have lost their child and so forth. And the child thinks, adolescent thinks that these parents are no good any longer and then wants to give up and so forth. However, if you have patience and continue with your loving, encouraging attitude, most of the time, you will notice that after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the children turn around and come the direction that you were hoping to begin with. Majority, that's what happens. When the parent doesn't give up and continues with love and encouragement, the child, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, will turn around and come. These are the children that after they have gone through their adolescence, they turn to their parents and say, "My God, you have matured so much, you have learned so much." Okay? Because it is the child who matures and then realizes that the parents were wise, but he cannot come and say it that way, so he said the parents have matured. But hopefully the parents mature also in the process. Hopefully that happens as well. You see. So these are some of the issues in this respect. Finally, we come to the issue of hierarchy. And when we come to the issue of hierarchy of relationships, obviously the blind obedience of the authoritarian and the anarchic type of relationship of the indulgent wouldn't work. Obviously they are not working. You have to have a new kind of order of relationship and hierarchy, in which on the one hand you have responsibility And on the other hand, you have cooperation.
Can you call this love?
You can call it anything you want, but it is more than that. It's different. You cannot call this love, no. Love is, there is a course on love next year for 5 days. You should come. And then you would see about...
I also must come.
Yes, many of us have to come. And then you would see about the dynamics of love. Okay, it's an exciting course. There are 2 courses, but about love. One of them is just about love, dynamics of love, how love evolves, what are different kinds of love, how you can become a loving person, and all of those things. And when you go through that course, then you don't say responsibility and cooperation is the same as love. There are aspects of love, but they're not the same. There are many other issues involved here. So, when you begin to develop a family which considers growth and transformation as the main objective and the most important thing in life, which functions according to the principles of unity in diversity, which creates an environment that the children, environment which is both orderly on the one hand and free and on the other hand, and allows children to be creative and everybody to be creative, and which teaches everybody that whatever you do, you have to keep in mind that you are responsible for what you do, and the orders that you come therefore you have to reflect on them, you have to so forth think about them, and when you don't understand them you have to deal with other people in cooperation and consult again. When you do that, when you make these as the parameters of your family, then you begin to raise children in a very different way than we have done in the past, you see. Now I'm sure that many of you already do that, do all of these things. I think what I have done here is nothing new, as much as it is putting it within a certain framework that we could then hopefully find it easier to use it as a guideline in the kind of things, as a reminder for the kind of things that we want to do. Now let's have some questions and answers. Any comments, anything anybody wants to say? We start from here, go there. All right.
It seems that growth, the ideas of growth and transformation are very broad terms and not clearly defined. You can grow and transform in many different directions, even along the spiritual axis, because there's many different attributes of God. Is there a way that we can define this better?
Growth and transformation, how could we define them in a way that they are more accessible and manageable, you are saying? Yes, you see, we have to see what is the essence of transformation. Okay. The essence of transformation is this, that in life, we are governed by certain forces and laws. Okay? These forces are instinctual forces. One series of forces are instinctual. Instincts that we have. Desire for food, desire for sex, desire for pleasure, desire for whatever. Okay? These are instinctual forces. Another force that we experience are forces that come as a result of our relationships, which are psychological in nature. Desire to be loved, desire to be accepted, desire to be praised, desire of that kind. Okay, that's the area related to our psychosocial aspect of our life. psychological forces. Okay. And the third one are those that are related to the spiritual aspect of our being. And that is the desire to evolve. Every human being has a desire to evolve, desire to find the truth, to find the truth, to know, to love, to exalt, to go up. This is a part of human desire also, okay? And not only these are desires, they are needs also, okay? They are forces within us. On the one hand, we want to gratify the needs. On the other hand, we want to establish intimate, close relationships and so forth. But on the other hand also, we want to evolve and develop. This is a part of human nature, okay? Process of transformation is that process in which we use all of these needs and desires and strivings according to certain laws that are universal in nature. Okay? And these laws are called the spiritual laws. Okay? And these spiritual laws basically say that everything that we do has to become creative rather than destructive, and universal rather than limited. Okay? And so having said all of these things, okay, so the problem is not whether you transform in respect to this area or that area or that area. That's, if we do that, you're right. There are many things that we want to transform constantly. Transformation, therefore, is not focusing on a specific area, say, I want to change from here to there, but rather to create a lifestyle in which everything that you want to do, to say, let me see whether what I'm doing is following both the spiritual laws and the natural laws or not. Whether they apply the spiritual laws to other laws of life or not. Whether they consider the spiritual laws or not. The spiritual transformation requires the consciousness of spiritual laws and their application. When you do that, in anything that you do, whether it is your job, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your studies, whether it's your creative activities, whether it is related to your emotions, to your thoughts, to your actions, you have to have one consciousness, and that consciousness is this: am I applying the spiritual principles to what I'm doing here or not? Which immediately makes you to question, what are those spiritual principles? Okay? And then it makes us to reflect, to think. You see, this is a more of an orientation and consciousness rather than any technique that you use. It's not a technological process. It's not technique. It's a mindset. See, the Universal House of Justice in their Red One message, I think it was to the whole world or to Europe, they said we need to change our mindset, our way of thinking. Okay? The way that you change your mindset is that you make yourself conscious of the spiritual laws that govern life. I've noticed people who put money in the stock market. Okay? I've observed them. They're fascinating people. They are totally conscious about the stock market. The television comes on, immediately say, let me business news. The newspaper, they buy a newspaper, they immediately go to the page that are these lines, the name of the companies and so forth, and they look into this. I don't know what they are looking for, and they make notes and so forth. And they always have a calculator with them. And they calculate this and that and that and so forth. So they have total consciousness of money. Okay? Many people have total consciousness of money. Other people have total consciousness of relationship. They are always conscious. Was this person nice to me? Do they love me? Are they having good impression of me? Do they think I'm a good person? Am I nicer than that person? Am I more beautiful than the other person? Constantly preoccupied with the relationship, whether you are loved or not, accepted or not, successful or not. This is your consciousness, okay? Now, if you reflect, you will see that each of us have something that is a predominant mode of consciousness for us, okay? The spiritual transformation means that you make the application of the spiritual principles to your life as your main consciousness, your main preoccupation of your consciousness. So when you deal with your children, a 12-year-old, you know what is 12-year-old going to be preoccupied with? It's going to be preoccupied with the change of his or her body, and with the relationships that it has, and with the school and how they do well, and this and that, and these issues. So you as a parent say, these are all important. But the most important thing always is that you be conscious of applying the spiritual principles to whatever you are thinking and feeling and doing. You see? It is this consciousness that is essential. You see what I mean? So it's not so many different things to going this path and that path trying to transform. But rather is to have your mindset focused differently. You know, like the dish of your psyche turn differently towards another receiver, kind of. Satellite, yeah. Another satellite. You're right. Thank you. Yes.
Sometimes the child knows very well what are the spiritual principles.
That's right.
And uses it when he is in
That's right.
his benefit.
That's right. And sometimes use it.
But is not important for him, is not the principal thing to do. He knows very well what
Yes.
but
Yes, I know
not his problem.
But you see, that's why when we talk about family and parenting, we say joys and sorrows of parenting. Okay? All right? Okay? Parenting have joys and has sorrows. Okay? Parenting has challenges and parenting has opportunities.
So what we can do when we know,
Yeah.
he knows that is not important for him.
Do not expect that children would follow everything that they know is good for them. Nor expect that children would grow as fast as we want them to grow. Nor you should expect children to be transformed the way we expect them to be transformed because we love them and it's good for them. You have to do your share, the child has to do his. You do your best. The degree and the manner in which the child responds to your parenting efforts is not in your hand. It is in the hand of the child. By the grace of God, this child eventually may do it right. Sometimes children may not. And if they didn't, we have to realize that if we have tried our best, we couldn't have done better than our best. We couldn't. I promise you, nobody can do better than his or her best. You see?
So the statement, your best is not good enough, is not right.
No, it's not. Your best is your best. At this time, this is your best. I can always ask and say, are you sure that it was your best? But you cannot say your best wasn't good enough. If it was the best, that was the best. Yeah.
I have 2-3 small questions.
Yes.
Can we say growth in spiritual laws have been defined by Baha'u'llah? Which are those laws?
Well, the laws of Baha'u'llah are essential for your spiritual growth and transformation.
Okay. And can we say communism was one of these things, authoritarian and indulgence?
Communism was primarily an authoritarian mode of, yeah.
And also a good example that you said the child has the ultimate, responsibility, whatever, no matter what you do. I think Mirza Muhammad Ali was a good example of this.
Yes. Yeah. When we say child, of course, we have to realize that the younger the child is, the greater the responsibility is on the parent, and the older the child becomes, the greater the responsibility on the child. And when the child reaches age 15, the child is responsible before God for what he does. So I always told my children, I said, look, you can disobey me, you can do whatever you want to do, but when you're 15, it's between you and God, okay? I want you to know that. And what I'm trying to do is to help you so that when you are 15, you can say yes to God and not no, okay? And because when they're 15, they're responsible before God. And I said, I would not then tell you, have you said your prayer? Because it's between you and God. I would not say whether you are behaving according to the principles or not, because it's between you and God. But I'm always available for consultation. If you want to come and consult with me, please do. And if I saw that you are doing things that obvious that you are doing this, which are harmful to you, I would mention it to you, not because you don't know it, because I know you know it, because we are talking about it, okay? And it's not because I'm interfering with that process, because you made it known to me, so you wanted me to know. So I come to say why you wanted me to know. You want help, So you have to deal with children as they grow older in a manner that gives increasingly more responsibility to them. Do not shoulder all the responsibilities for the behavior of children yourself when they become 13, 14, 15 years old, because when you do that, they make sure that you fail. If you shoulder the responsibility for their good behavior, in the end you come a loser, both of you. Okay? So as the child grows, always give the child more responsibility on the one hand and more authority for their behavior and respect for themselves on the other. And say, well, you are growing, you seem to be very intelligent, you know all of these things. So I think now no longer I'm as much responsible for this aspect as you are. Let's see how you do it. You see how you develop, you see. So you begin to encourage the child to take on the responsibilities, which otherwise he would be very glad for you to take on yourself. And then in the end you fail. You see.
This is only the word creative or creativity. I just wanted to make a better understanding for myself. In another aspect, we say that only we have got one creator.
Yes.
God. And the table or anything we create, as we say create, it's a shape we change. You don't create from nothing to something.
Well,
Is it possible to...
that's not the concept of creativity we are talking about. You see,
Initiation maybe?
no. You see, God said that He has created us in His own image. Right? And He said, I have put in human beings all my names. All of my attributes are reflected in human beings. One of the fundamental attributes of God is creativity. God is creator. He creates. Okay? The only difference between, many differences, but one of the differences, fundamental differences between God as a creator and us as a creator is that God creates out of nothingness. Okay? We create by what is already there. Okay? But for example, if you reflect on, let's say, programs for a computer, you see, is a very high level of creativity. And it is not even creating out of a matter as much as it's creating from your mind when you write the programs and so forth. So human beings are extremely advanced creators, and we create a lot of things. And when we are talking about creativity, we are not talking about only artistic issues. We are talking about creativity in every aspect of life. And of all things that we create, the most important is the kind of a persons we become. That's the most important thing that we create. The kind of persons we become. And when we let our children to know that the kind of a person that become is the most important of their creation, then their attitude would be different. All right? One or two more and then we stop.
Yesterday you were mentioning about the different, that you began to work with the pre-adolescent child on the question of helping them create themselves, or what would they like to become as they grow up. Would you wait for the child to reach the pre-adolescent stage before you discuss that, or would you do that some?
Oh, no. You do it throughout life. But when they are in age of pre-adolescence, or junior adolescence, not pre-adolescence, that becomes very important. That's crucial, becomes more crucial. But you always sit and talk with children about their future, and as long as you're prepared for change of mind, children would change their minds. And as long as you don't get derailed, say, oh, you told me that you're going to be this, and now you're talking about that. When you do that, then discourages the child to look into different areas, and usually they don't tell you what you're going to do. And so, and it becomes a different process. But as long as you're open, you can discuss these issues. Whenever you think a given child has reached to that level of understanding that could discuss these issues. Could be 5 years old, could be 10 years old, could be 12 years old. Because different children mature in different areas at a different rate. You see, it's not everybody matures in the same way, in the same rate. Yes.
In this process of development of children, where you build on foundations of trust and trustworthiness, and then subsequently you give them these spiritual tools that they can use to become creative individuals, where does detachment fit into this whole process?
Well, the detachment is a natural outcome of transformation. Okay? Is also a requirement for transformation, if you wish. Okay? But the more an individual grows, matures, the more capable of detachment that person becomes.
So it may not be a part of the process.
It's partially a part of process in a sense that you put all of these spiritual virtues as a part of vocabulary and part of mindset of the individual, of the child. Okay? But at any given time, one set of virtues, a set of spiritual processes, spiritual qualities are predominant. Okay? For example, the issue of truth, truthfulness, trustworthiness are essential for the early stages of life. The issues of unity and harmony and unity, diversity and unifier and so forth becomes a little bit later very prominent in life. The issues of service and justice becomes predominant a little bit in life. The issues of detachment begin to express themselves at their height later. You see, the whole process of a slow death, people getting old, gradually getting weaker, gradually getting less capable of doing this and that and so forth. These are all the processes that God has put in our nature so that gradually we detach from our bodies and get ready to go. You see, these are the processes that are there. So at any given time in life, some of these issues become very prominent. Others are there and should pay attention to, but some become very predominant. And then others become predominant, and others. You see? And at different conditions, different issues become predominant. You see? For example, if you suddenly your house has been washed away by a tremendous flood. Okay? So now here, suddenly the issue of detachment becomes very important. Because otherwise you would destroy yourself, okay? Because, all right, your place is destroyed, okay? And you say, all right, I now understand. Baha'u'llah says, be detached, and everything would be okay. So I'm not going now to be worried about something that I've lost and I cannot do anything about. So I start building again, okay? So these things happen in life to give us lessons necessary for our spiritual growth. But in a natural process also the stages come that each of these qualities become more predominant.
So yesterday she gave the question that if children didn't get a foundation that's trust.
You're right, she did. One of your children are here. Yes, go ahead. What you were going to say?
How can we deal to that child that they don't have foundation to trust?
Well, you see, the question is, what you do if a child has missed opportunity for establishing some fundamental foundations for their development. For example, trust, self-discipline is another one, and so forth, at different stages in life. Well, there are several issues involved here. First of all, we know that if children have difficult upbringing during the first few years of their lives, this about 5 years or so, that it's going to be very difficult later to transform. So the more attention we pay during those earlier stages, the better it is. This also says something to us about the whole issue of parents working or mothers working when the children are at that age, and who takes care of the children, and the daycare centers and the whole movement surrounding that and so forth. These are all related to the fact that the character of the child is formed to a very large degree during the first few years of life, about 5 years, and to a much larger degree during the first 15 years of life. Okay. To a lesser degree, still some changes can take place until about you're 19 or 20. These are the developmental years. When we go beyond that, then changing oneself becomes a major, major struggle. And all of us know that. It becomes very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So the answer is, the sooner you pay attention to something, the better it is. The better it is. The longer you wait, the more difficult it is to change a behavior that is not, a habit is that is not right, or a behavior that is not right. Or, you see? Yes.
Children in authoritarian society tend to be deprived their creativity or feelings, and they are good at following the direction or obeying the instruction, but they don't know what to do without what tell them to do.
That's right.
So how we can encourage them, people who don't know how to react or what do you want to do?
Yes. Well, that's a very good question. The question is, in authoritarian societies, children are not encouraged to be creative, and they're very afraid of being creative. And the question is, how can we help these individuals to become more creative, because the society wants them to obey and otherwise rejects them and is in a difficult situation. Okay. You see, when you look at these issues, you have to look at two levels. One is at the individual level, the other one at the societal level, okay? At the individual level, for every child, you can do something to help the child to have courage to be creative, okay? In other words, if you know a child, let's say a child of your friends or a child that is your student or somebody like that, and you know that this child has been raised in an authoritarian environment, is very afraid to be creative, and then you can do something. You can begin to help that child by encouraging that child, by giving that child confidence, by showing that child that he or she has many capacities, that he or she is very intelligent, very beautiful, very handsome, very capable. You just gradually help the child to see that. And also, if the child is below age 15 or so, it's a good idea to consult with the parents and say to the parent, you know, what I think we should do for your child is to encourage the child to become more creative, and these are the things that I am doing, and I suggest that you start doing it at home. So you do that, okay? This is at the individual level, and for each child, your program would be different. But also we should do it at the social level. We have to gradually begin to bring new way of thinking into a society, begin to talk about these issues, begin to write about these issues, begin to raise the consciousness of the society about these issues. And this is happening in all the authoritarian societies. These are happening. All of the indulgent societies now beginning to realize that it wasn't good, and they are trying to change. That's the reason that, for example, in United States, you see that there is a tremendous wave of anti-indulgent behavior, but they are going back to authoritarian now behavior. You know, the fundamentalist movement is totally authoritarian. So they're just moving from one problem to the opposite problem, and this, of course, is not going to solve anything. You see, they are desperate. They don't know what to do, so they go from one to the other, and then the authoritarian societies, they jump to the indulgent, and these are the dangers that I see all over the world. I travel and I see the societies that are authoritarian, they are moving now towards indulgence. And the societies that are indulgent, they are going back towards authoritarian. And because they don't find an answer, they don't have the answer. And so they justify what they do in these processes. But we have to begin to develop new consciousness and new awareness. So hopefully a third way begins to develop. All right, let's stop here and see you tomorrow. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.